Hello and welcome to the Screen Chronicles. I'm Colby, and with me as always is Steve. Now, The Last Kingdom is a show that truly makes the viewer feel like they're there and that it could be real. Now, other than the actors, there's so many people behind the scenes that are helping to bring this show to life. And we're very fortunate today to be joined by one of those people. We're joined by the costume designer for The Last Kingdom, Molly Rowe. Thank you for joining us on the Screen Chronicles, Molly.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing today, Molly?
Yeah, all good, all good. Yes, surprisingly busy for somebody with no industry at the moment to work in, but that's good. It's amazing how you can apply yourself to other things when you need to keep busy.
What have you been up to?
Thrillingly, I've been working with our union on health and safety guidelines for returning to work and what that might look like within the costume department.
Oh.
That's been so kind of doing something a little bit different, and also I'm using this time to kind of push forward thinking about sustainability within the costume department as well, because I think it's a really amazing time to be able to think about the things that you can't when you're at work all the time. So I'm sort of trying to use it positively that way.
So when you say sustainability, I noticed that you do some of your sketches on an iPad. Is that kind of what you're talking about, those kind of things?
Yeah, that's something I decided to do last year on Last Kingdom, actually, was to not draw on paper and kind of see if it changed anything. And it was an interesting thing to do. I mean, when I was at university, there weren't computers, so I'm from the school of drawing on paper with pencils. So it's kind of part of my process, and it's quite difficult for me to kind of adapt in that way. But I think it's important to try at least. So that was the kind of aim there.
So Steve and I have never met anybody who's got a job quite like yours. So we're really excited to talk to you and learn about some of the little details and the aspects of your job. But we just want to know, how does someone like you get to the position you're in?
It's been a very long journey. I studied fashion design at university, and then I became a stylist through chance for about 8 years, I suppose, after that. So I worked with, I'm sure everyone knows Adele. I worked with her on her first album. And then I kind of learnt about costume designing and really liked the idea of working in a team and not just kind of deciding what people wear because it looks nice on them, but having a little more background, I suppose, and research to do. So I started to contact students at film school and ask them if I could design the costumes for their films that they produce as part of their courses, and that's kind of how I got in that way.
Cool. So did you know you wanted to do something similar like when you were growing up, or where did your interest start?
I wanted to either be, quite randomly, a pilot, a lawyer, or a fashion designer.
Okay.
The other two, probably, that there's a very big period in any creative industry, I think, which is really, really hard, and it involves a lot of knockbacks and a lot of self-preservation and trying things and hustling, and it's not for everybody is what I would say. It's quite it can be quite challenging and quite ego bruising along the way, I think, is probably the best way to explain it. You kind of have to learn to have a bit of a thick skin,
Sure,
not take things personally. Because ultimately you're putting your ideas out there and someone's saying they do or don't like them. That's always quite difficult. And I suppose it's still the case, but there's a TV in between now. So
yeah. It's interesting because, we've talked to a lot of actors and they have their scenes, but your work is pretty much in front of our eyes the whole time, you know, which is really, really very fascinating. How did you become involved with The Last Kingdom then?
I worked with somebody who works at Carnival, who obviously make the show, and she's always been quite an amazing champion since we worked together previously, and she really, really wanted me to go in and meet Nigel to look at designing the show, and I'd never designed anything period before, and I'd never designed anything on this scale before, so you know, it was a massive challenge, and I'm very appreciative to her for kind of, I don't know, seeing something and taking a bit of a gamble, I suppose. But one thing I think that, you know, the Last Kingdom guys do better than any show I've ever worked in is the people they put together are so amazing that it really, the cliche that we're a great big family is actually kind of true. And you know, they're very good at putting personalities that work together and support each other, and it's really a wonderful place to be. So I feel quite blessed, I suppose, to be in that position.
You started in season 3, correct?
Yes.
And did it feel like that right from the beginning, I guess, jumping in, you know, kind of halfway through the series now?
Yeah, it was good in many ways, because of course to establish a show of this scale with nothing, you know, from the very beginning is an entirely different challenge. So it felt great to be able to come in to a show that you know, has a huge stock of costumes from 2 series already, that we delve into and re-dye things and cut them up and you know, add bits and take bits away to make new characters, and it sort of meant that I wasn't starting absolutely from nothing, so it definitely helped that way. And also, you know, to have the support of the cast was really amazing as well, because I think it's very easy to imagine coming in and wanting to change everything and making everything your own, but that really didn't feel right with Last Kingdom, because the cast are so incredible and they've created these really wonderful characters that I just wanted to come in and see how we could, like, what was next for their character, with how the storyline was, you know, where it was taken in series 3, rather than kind of just change everything because I could. That didn't feel right, and it didn't feel respectful.
Yeah, and we've talked, you know, we've done a number of these actor talks now, and your name just keeps coming up with, you know, Magnus Brun, I think, was the first, and he talked about giving you, how many high fives was it?
3.
Steve?
3 is what he told us. He said you guys had never met before, and then he gave you a lot of input on what he wanted, and he was surprised that you were receptive to it, and you guys were high-fiving throughout the whole time, and he said it was a blast.
And that you're trying to turn him into a peacock.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think because when I read Knut's character, I really kind of felt that come off the page. You know, it was great. He was the second new Dane for me. So the first person I tackled was Bloodhair.
It's also a great look.
And Knut was next. So I had these 2 really incredible and very different characters to kind of design armor for the first time for. So you know, that's why the collaboration from those guys is so wonderful, because we build something together, and you know, they have to wear it every day for 8 months, so you know, it's better if they like it.
Yeah, it's just really cool, the teamwork. We didn't realize that, like, the actors could kind of come in with their input. We thought that was awesome. We loved learning about the Midgard serpent in Knut's necklace and shield, and things like that. We thought were fascinating. We'd love to learn more of those little details, kind of as we talk today, if you think of any.
I think you've spoken to Jeppe, haven't you?
I mean, What a guy.
Amazing. And I think Heston is such an incredible character, and he's so mesmeric when he's on screen as well. I think he really kind of inhabits that character and the world so amazingly. And we really loved his armor, which existed before I came onto the show, but we wanted to kind of elevate it. He'd kind of moved into a different position for series 3. You know, he'd moved from being Siegfried and Eric's guy to
Right.
being with Ragnar. So we went through all the runes and kind of work. It was Jeppe's idea that we would pick out some runes that kind of he as Heston really liked, you know, the meanings of, and then we had them engraved into some of the petals on his armor, and we made him a new van brace which had the rune for horse on it. So we were kind of trying to incorporate all these little things. And then in series 3, I don't know if you remember, but he went to Alfred to kind of pretend that he was a Christian nowadays.
Yes.
So we gave him a fan brace with a massive cross on it as well, to kind of try and sort of you know, make it look like he was making an effort, when in reality he would have stolen that from somebody on the battlefield. So we were
very cool. We
had a lot of fun. And actually this season we Dagfinn, who was a character in series 2 and 3, played by the wonderful Simon, Jeppe and I took some bits of Dagfinn's costume and incorporated them into Heston's as a little homage.
Cool.
Yeah.
So he can live on in season 4. Very cool.
Exactly.
That is very, very cool. That's awesome. So talking about Uhtred, his evolution with his armor, I think in seasons 1 and 2, he has that kind of Ragnar the Fearless fur.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving to season 3 and season 4, it's a little bit more of that kind of that navy blue. And I just read recently that you thought about his connection with Ragnar when you were kind of using that bluish color. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think you know, Uhtred's connection with Ragnar and Brida, of course, as well, is so strong. And when I was thinking about colors for series 3, I wanted to really make sure that all of the different armies were very defined by a color palette. It's something that they've implemented before, but we wanted to just heighten the colors a little bit more so that you could really tell what was going on the battlefield. And one of the reasons being that our first battle in series 3 was Mercia, Wessex, and Bloodhair's new army. So it was a good opportunity to kind of kick it off from there. And previously, Uhtred had always worn brown tones, very autumny tones. And I think I screen tested some navy blue armor. I'd sort of vocalized it, and it was no one was 100% sure. And so we screen tested loads of different things to see what we liked. And my leather worker had done that beautiful woven design that we ended up using in series 3 in the navy, and we screen tested it, and everyone at the same time just went, oh my goodness, it just, because it's not black, it doesn't absorb all of the light within the fabric. So it gave just another little dimension. And I was really pleased because it kind of gave him a color palette on his own, but it very much still tied him to the Brida and Ragnar world subtly.
The worlds he's trapped in between.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I really wanted to kind of, in series 4, I wanted to push his armor even further into maybe what we within the show associate as a Dane kind of silhouette.
Okay.
And I think the navy and the brown make sure that he doesn't look too like the Danes, but he kind of straddles both worlds, I think, still quite successfully. But it's been really fun to kind of have have the agency to develop Uhtred's look so much. And it's been really great working with Alexander to do that, because he's really made Uhtred's character his own. And I think, you know, having that collaboration between us has been great as well, to kind of make sure that he feels it's right.
Absolutely. Does he put a lot of input in with his own costume?
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. I mean, I do try to with everybody, especially if they're you know, if they're in the show for more than one episode, you know, then it really makes sense that we're all kind of working together to create it.
So what's the biggest difference then between designing something for Adele versus designing something for Uhtred?
Well, Uhtred does more horse riding, and
Oh, that's right. That's right.
The same amount of Dane slaying, though.
Exactly.
What about with hair and makeup then? Is that something you have to work with them too? Because I know someone like Canute, who's a very iconic sort of red hair, beard all over the place. Do you guys have to be like, oh, well, I can't use this color. He's just going to look like a giant piece of red, you know, ornament or something here. Is that something you guys have to work with, or?
Yeah, of course. We have to take in considerations to absolutely hair and makeup, and we work with them very, very closely, because of course, you know, the two of us together are creating the character that you see. So it's really important that that we work quite closely together to make sure that it becomes one and nothing's kind of opposing. Of course, we also work really closely with the production designer and the art department as well. So there's things which, you know, I've done in costume that they've taken through into shields or swords, and
Cool.
vice versa. And what does the set look like? So what colors would look good in that space? What's going to disappear? What's going to kind of be too much? And what's the kind of lighting and the sentiment in the scene as well. So there's loads to kind of take into consideration when we make anything.
Yeah.
Wow, that seems so complex. Now, The Last Kingdom just released a video of basically walking through your day in the life of The Last Kingdom in your job. And anybody who hasn't seen that video, go check it out. It's really a wonderful video. But I gotta ask, how many hours a day are you on set? Because I didn't realize how much went into your job as far as being there when they're filming, which is really crazy.
Yeah, so ever present, really.
Obviously, it's different kind of every day, but in Battle Week, for example, we would start 2 to 3 hours before the unit call, and then we would shoot on Last Kingdom. We shoot continuous days, so a 10-hour day, and then we have kind of 1 to 2 hours at the end as well, and then another team come in and do the laundry or any repairs and things like that to get ready for the next day. So we can work anything from kind of 12 to 14, 15 hours a day. So it's pretty, yeah.
Get used to losing sleep a little bit during those battle weeks.
Yes, exactly. And then, you know, you might get one day when Ethelfled and Aldhelm having a conversation with Ethelred in the palace, and they're all costumes that have been worn before. So then maybe I would spend the day in the workroom doing fittings, or you know, working with the team who are still making what's coming up next. So I tend to be on set if a costume is being filmed for the first time. So I will set how it looks and how we want it to be. And then my on-set team take over from there, and they look after the continuity, and you know, they make sure that it looks the same every time. And then on Battle Week, we just everyone has to be there all the time, and it's, you know, it's super fun as well. I have to say, it's hard, but it's really fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, are you guys like analyzing like every shot to make sure, I don't know, if somebody got hit by a sword here and like something got cut, that's the same every shot after? Is that the kind of thing you guys do?
Yes, it's we were lucky actually with the battle at the beginning of season 4. We shot it chronologically, which is incredibly rare.
Really?
Usually we kind of jump all over the place.
Oh, wow.
You know, so we have to sit down with makeup and stunts and the director and go through the battle basically and kind of work out. I work really closely with Levente, the stunt coordinator, and his team. And so if somebody, what does Sigtryggr do in this battle? Okay, well, this happens, he gets hit here. So then me and the makeup department basically mentally have to build a picture of where things happen, who's bloody after what point, is something cut here, you know, and then maybe we have to make more versions of the costume so that we have a post this version, but then we need to shoot before. So I don't know if I'm explaining that very clearly, but it's quite complex.
It's super complex. And yeah, I mean, and then imagine it when it's not shot chronologically. Holy moly.
Yeah, because you know, even if we shoot something chronologically, the nature of filming is you shoot one way and then you shoot the other.
Okay.
Where you shoot a master and then you shoot one person's POV and then the other. So actually, even though it's chronologically, it's still happening 3 times at least, plus maybe a close-up of it if it's, you know, a particularly spectacular injury or death, of which I believe we have quite a few in season 4.
There are some, yeah. I think the blood splatter, you know, is a lot more in season 4 too. It seemed, at least. So it's probably something you guys had to take into account a little bit.
Yes, lots of cleaning back of the fake blood that we use is quite sticky as well. So it's sort of gross. So we tend to kind of wash it back and reapply it if it needs to stay there, because it's just everything. So it's got grass and leaves and fluff, and you know, it's kind of gross.
And Adele didn't have any of this, right?
None of it.
Exactly.
Another big standout for me this season was the Welsh. They're in.
Yes.
I used to always pick on Cole because he has his jerseys in the background. He used to have an Ovechkin jersey for Capitals, and it's a solid red. So I always pick on it. And then the Welsh are the first ones. They're like head to toe in red. They're the most vibrant people I think we've seen in the whole show.
It's cool.
Yes. Oh my God. It was so fun to have, because obviously I've had new characters, and I had Bloodhair's army and Canut's army, which were new, but they were very much within, you know, the Last Kingdom world. And Wales was the first full new, you know, army that we got to do. And yes, made quite a bold decision to go with red, but you know, it seems to have gone down quite well, which I'm really pleased about. We just wanted it to be really bold and also be kind of different. You know, the Welsh were very different to the Saxons, and I think it was quite fun to work out how to do that.
Where did the red come from? Is there any kind of historical significance to it, or?
No, I did find some illustrations, you know, depicting that time that were red, but actually, if I'm really honest, it's one of the only colours that we hadn't used yet that we could really go for, you know, on a big scale. There was always some red within Alfred's world.
Yes.
But with Edward, I've kind of moved him. You may have noticed, but he's quite blue.
Especially when he gets to Aylesburg, I noticed that a lot. And
yeah, absolutely. And right at the end of the season, we decided on blue so that he's not mirroring his father, and has he been influenced by Uhtred?
Very cool. Very cool. That's awesome. That's awesome. One of my favorite looks of Edward's, though, I love his Tettenhall battle garb.
Yes.
That's an awesome look. And I think it is red. His sleeves are red, and he's got the same style chest armor, similar to his season 3, I think.
It's the
Somewhat.
same. Yeah, it's the
Is
same
it the same?
one. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so it's very cool.
That is something though with the Welsh though, because they are a new, different, I guess, separate kingdom than all the other England kingdoms. And that is something, at least when I first started watching the show, I had trouble differentiating between, oh, those are the Northumbrians, these are the Wessex people, but the Welsh, bam, they're all red, you know.
They were also really fun in that the design of what they wear is quite different as well. And we looked at that period, there was a lot of Roman influence in Wales at that time, and so that's why we kind of went for, when we see the big scene in the hall, all the ealdormen have got quite kind of drapey things, and then for the Welsh army, the skirts have that quite Roman panel. So it's 6 rather than 4, which is what is more common for the Danes. And yeah, it was great to kind of, we also created this beautiful like flower emblem, which for Howell made all these, my jeweler made all these rings and brooches and necklaces, and it was all it was quite fun. He was quite blingy, and I mean Stefan Rodri and Nigel Lindsay were so fun to work with as well, and I think that they were so fantastic to bring Wales to life as well.
It was very cool. Now, when you started doing The Last Kingdom, did you go and do research into the type of materials that were used in that time period? I know there's not a lot known about that time period, but what kind of research did you do?
So I actually found out that I had been offered The Last Kingdom while I was shooting a movie in New York. So I, the next day, went straight to the Met.
Cool.
Because it was very fortuitous, and I felt, everything for a reason. So I went there because obviously they have the most incredible exhibition of Anglo-Saxon artifacts. So that's where I started actually, and it's very difficult because of course we have to take so much into consideration within the practicalities of filming and health and safety as well. So that does inform quite a lot of what we can and can't do. For example, we couldn't have all of the cast in steel helmets that cover their face for 10 hours a day. For months on end in the 40-degree Hungarian summer, or the -14 Hungarian winter, depending
for season 3, right?
Yeah, exactly. And for things like chainmail, we can't put the actors in steel. Adrian Boucher, the lovely Stiapa, does wear steel. And in season 3, there's a scene where Alfred is putting his chainmail on for the last time when he's really, really ill, and it's such an incredible scene. And working with David was really amazing because he's so inspiring, and he's just created, the Alfred that he's created is just
legendary. Oh my God.
Legendary, truly. And so we decided that for that scene, in order to help David so that he wouldn't have to think about the fact that he was supposed to be putting chainmail on and being so frail, we decided to use real steel chainmail for that. Cool. So the weight and the struggle was real ultimately, and it kind of really helped him because then he could just concentrate on on his words and his motivation for the scene, and he wasn't thinking, oh, this is light but I need to pretend it's heavy, or because it was really hard.
It looks like he's going to implode, crumble when he puts that on. It's so hard to watch David Dawson. It's a wonderful performance, but to watch him at the end of season 3, how weak Alfred is, Oh man, it hits you.
Yeah, when he puts that on, it looks like he sinks like an inch or two into the ground, and you're just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating to know.
We did a lot of little things actually with David and I made loads of little changes throughout series 3 actually, where we kind of, but by the end we'd completely remade his costumes bigger, but not just bigger, but we'd sort of moved specific seams so that he looked like he was kind of shrinking, and to help him kind of look more frail on screen, because obviously it's just David under there. So we tried to kind of play around a little bit with those things to help give the illusion, but I mean his performance was just so emotional and mind-blowing.
Now, red was kind of his color in season 3. Was there any significance behind using red? Like, was it for power or something like that?
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right. It felt very kind of powerful and regal, and and again, it wasn't something that anyone else was doing, and it was a much kind of more burgundy tone rather than the
it was
Wales.
right. Very cool. Now, another character that has a very interesting arc in season 4 is Aelswith. And so I'm interested to know, what kind of changes did you make from season 3 Aelswith to season 4 Aelswith?
Well, the big one is that, spoiler alert, of course, Aelswith rides for the first time ever. So we had a big discussion about whether she would be side saddle or not, and I'm very pleased that we went for the truly badass way. But our challenge was that none of Aelswith's costumes were suitable for straddling a horse in.
Right.
So we got to remake, rethink and redesign that. And this kind of high collar is something that Eliza and I really, we thought it really kind of helped. It has this kind of nun vibe to keeping her neck quite kind of structured, and having that shape there is,
that's cool.
Is kind of the reason that we kind of did that. So it was quite fun to kind of keep all of that sort of to about the waist, and then
sort of to emphasize her like piety a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. She's so haughty and she's so poised, and I think it just really elevates that. It's all kind of very strict and constrained and pious, I suppose.
Very cool. Very, very cool. And I noticed she also had like hoop sleeves, like the sleeves were different too.
Yeah, her sleeves were different. Eliza really wanted us to look at that. In series 3, we did like long length, which was then pushed up and gathered as that was a sign of wealth. But this season, we just wanted to do something a bit different, and I think it really suits Eliza's silhouette, and it sort of really helped elevate that kind of pious stature as well. Somehow, having, we still had the volume; it was just in a different area, I suppose. And also, of course, that costume took us all the way through to when kidnapped. We chose fabrics that were light coloured for all of those guys for that scene, so that we could tell the story of how long they'd been there, and how kind of dirty and they would have lice by that time, and all of that kind of stuff, and they weren't washing, and they had no bathroom, of course, or anything like that. It was all in the one space. So we had to choose something quite early on that would tell that story later. So that was cool.
Very, very cool. Any other aspects of that helped with maybe like the empathy or sort of the regret maybe that she was feeling?
Yeah, I think so. The thing with Aelswith is, I think she just always genuinely believes that she's doing the right thing, and she, she really stands by Alfred and his beliefs. And I think they're really challenged in series 4. And I think the way that Eliza plays Elswith is so incredible. I think, you know, again, I know I keep saying it, but the cast are really phenomenal on this show. And I think the way that they have developed their characters is really special.
Totally.
You have a favorite costume that you've had to design throughout the show that you've been on so far?
Probably know the answer to this, I suppose. Skade, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Skade was the first costume that I designed, actually. I really wanted to not create something typically witchy.
Okay.
And actually, I worked with a pattern cutter friend of mine who I've known for 20 years. We used to make, you know, red carpet dresses. He would make them and I would dress people in them if I could. He makes beautiful, beautiful gowns out of beautiful fabrics. And I thought that could be a really fun place to kind of start with Skade. So we made this beautiful gown, and then destroyed it, and continued to for the series. And it was really fun, and you know, it was sort of slightly mortifying for him, having never worked in film, to kind of have made this beautiful thing by hand. And then I was like, right, and now the breakdown team are going to do this, and it came back and he just kind of went, so awesome. That, you know, but that was fun, and Taya was great. And I think Kate Benton, who was the makeup designer on series 3, did such a fab job with her look. Like, it was really cool.
We're scared of her. We are
and you know what, Taya is the sweetest angel as well. And then she'd kind of put all of that on and just be the worst. So yeah.
Man. Great. Yeah, you guys nailed that one for sure. Another interesting one, and someone who also kind of changes through season 4, is Brida. When we first see her, she's still kind of wearing the Ragnar blue that she was wearing in season 3. But now she's got the kind of scaly skirt that it's more like Canute's. Could you tell us about how, you know, that she goes into slavery, and then how did her costume change in season 4 based on her storyline?
So with Brida, I mean, firstly, poor Brida, you know,
yeah.
she's such a badass, and she's treated so badly. And, you know, it's really a time when really she is a bigger commander than, you know, any of these other guys. And, you know, totally. Debatably so, but for me, for sure.
I think so.
And you know, she has to constantly ally herself with people, and of course, she didn't know the truth about what happened with Ragnar. Right. Mm-hmm. So she's currently allied with Canute at the beginning of series 4. And I wanted to kind of create something a little bit new, because I knew her journey in advance. So I knew that we had to incorporate her pregnancy into her costume.
Right.
And also, I really wanted to kind of still have that little tie to Ragnar. So what we actually did was repurpose Tobias's petal skirt, and we had it completely reshaped and resized to fit Emily. So that's actually Ragnar's skirt, which I'm sure, you know, technically Ragnar did get buried in it. I know that, but we, you know, we wanted to give it another life, and you know, we missed Tobias a lot, so it was another kind of way to keep him in the show, I suppose. And yeah, we wanted to, so Canute has these kind of coloured green petals on his
Yeah.
armor. So we thought that would be a nice thing to join them together, but we used the Ragnar blue to do that with Brida. So she's kind of a little like Uhtred, I suppose, but within 2 Dane worlds at the beginning of season 4. But she, I mean, it's so great. You know, she's got an axe and a sword and a knife, and she's just amazing. She's so cool.
Skull in the hair.
Yeah,
Keeping the hair together. What better way to keep your hair together?
Who's more fun to design for, the Danes or the Saxons then?
The Dane.
Oh yeah.
I would think so. I mean, it's so cool.
They get all the cool stuff.
They do get all the cool stuff. It was cool to do. Actually, Erdwulf and Edith were really fun to do.
Yeah, Edith, she's in all purple. She's another one I was like, all right, she stands out from everyone else too.
Yeah, those two were brilliant. And with Edith, we wanted to make her very different to Ethelfled, silhouette-wise, and we looked at loads of kind of 70s icons like Lulu de la Falaise and all these kind of, you know, but quite bohemian, like Yves Saint Laurent in Morocco, kind of hanging out vibe, and you know, Serge Gainsbourg and Jane Birkin, and kind of we looked at lots of things like that, which is maybe a little unexpected as research for a 9th century show, but we wanted that feeling, so we kind of tried to work out how we could do that by using certain fabrics that were appropriate, but certain shapes that were more modern to create her look.
Very cool. Now, you mentioned with Brida, you knew her storyline. I mean, so that you could help design her costume. Do you pretty much know, like, before the season even starts shooting, like, what's going to happen with all the characters?
Some of them.
Some of them. Okay.
No, that's a really big challenge actually for us. So I think the best way to explain it is, for example, when I start a film, I have the script for the whole movie. And I can sit down and I know what's happening to everybody. I know where they go. I know what they do. I can budget, you know, because I have the whole picture. And for a TV series, we shoot in blocks. So on Last Kingdom, we do 5 blocks of 2 episodes. So each block has a different director.
Okay.
And so we prep with that director, and then when that block starts shooting, we start prepping with the next director for the next block. So the scripts come in this format.
Gotcha.
So we, with Brida, because something so massive happens to her, I did know in the beginning, but things change, you know, things change along the way, and different writers for different blocks as well. So there's all kinds of different input that kind of inform what happens. So sometimes, you know, it's quite difficult to budget from that respect. And also, you know that something massive is going to happen in episode 10, but maybe you've not got much money left by then.
Very interesting. Now, was the plan that Finan was just not going to wear sleeves anymore, or what was the deal with that?
Do you know what? Mark has been dying to take his top off for months. You see them. We joke about it. But yes, because it was the summer, of course, we had the opportunity to kind of do that, which was great. And it also meant that Pix, the makeup designer, worked out what had happened previously, because of course he had loads of scars on his arms from being on the ship when we first meet him, when he was enslaved. So if I decide to suddenly reveal a part of someone's body, then it has quite a big impact on the makeup department. So we really have to work together if that's going to happen. Like, you know, for example, if we ever see Uhtred's back, then we see his tattoo, we see all of his scars. So it's really important not to kind of throw things at somebody. So
one thing you also mentioned too is you make a beautiful outfit, and then you got to send it to breakdown, correct?
Yes.
Could you talk to us a little bit about what breakdown's all about?
Yeah, so the breakdown department for me is really, really important on anything I do. And whether it's just as simple as putting something through the wash a couple of times. That's its like most basic form, so that you're not, you know, literally getting something out of a packet and putting it on someone. That's my kind of pet hate, when you watch something and you can see fold lines or the hanger thing, you know.
Oh.
That's my kind of, it's more of a contemporary issue. But on The Last Kingdom, it's super important. It's always been an aesthetic choice for Last Kingdom to be very real and dirty, and not this kind of very pristine kind of fantasy look. And I think, you know, it's very obvious when you watch the show that makes a huge difference, that things aren't perfect and they are kind of really lived in and worn. And so we have a big breakdown team in Last Kingdom. Anytime that a costume's ready from the workroom, then it will go to them, and we decide what level or what stage breakdown we would do. So for example, Elswith and Edward in the palace, Elfled always has like a stage 1 very, very light breakdown. So it's just making the cloth and the clothes not look new. It's just giving a bit of life as well. So they shade and they add light and dark tones to different areas to make them look worn. So it's artistry basically. They kind of paint onto all of the clothes. I think it's probably the easiest way to explain it. And then, you know, with some of the Danes, of course, then it's quite full on. And with any new leather as well, it's really important that we really kind of work into that. So again, you kind of get this really beautiful thing, and then you give it to somebody who beats it up. And I've worked with Daryl, who's head of breakdown on The Last Kingdom, for 2 seasons, and he's such an incredible artist, and he really thinks outside the box and adds so much life to the clothes, which I think with Finnans, I posted a pre and post that Catherine, our breakdown artist, had worked on, and you can see the difference in the colours and what it does. And, you know, even something that looks like it's fine has still had quite a lot of work in order to make it look normal.
Interesting. So like the outfit Uhtred wears before he's baptized. Not the one he wears while he's baptized, the one he wears before he's baptized, which is like the cleanest thing I've ever seen on The Last Kingdom. Did that go through any kind of breakdown?
No, there's 3 exceptions to the rule that I have just pretended is a rule. Uhtred's baptism robe, nothing, was like the purest thing. And then, of course, when we see Alfred and when we see Ethelred lying in state, that is completely untreated, and actually poses really quite a challenge on The Last Kingdom to try and keep anything clean for longer than 2 minutes. So, you know, we're kind of, with Toby and with David, we were kind of having to, you know, because obviously the sets are still quite dirty just from having people in them, and everyone around them has dust and all of this kind of thing going on. So we would spend, you know, those scenes were a challenge in the opposite direction to try and keep them clean. Yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Very, very fascinating. And then we have a new character in season 4, Sigtryggr. He's another one I'd love to hear about, because I like his Mjolnir necklace with like the double ring.
Yeah,
really, really cool. And then just his chest armor is also just kind of a cool design.
I guess similarly to the Welsh, actually, the Sigtryggr Danes were, for us to be entirely different. They were coming from Ireland, story-wise. So, you know, we wanted to kind of differentiate them from our kind of fur-covered dudes that we've seen up till now. Ace is very, you know, he's very kind of tall and elegant, and, you know, he's got quite a different stature to quite a lot of the Danes that we've had before. So we wanted to sort of exploit that, I suppose, and kind of look at him a bit differently. So speaking to Ace, we decided that he's very cunning and he's very kind of cat-like, and he's a thinker, basically. So that's why we went for all these very kind of intricate ideas with him. And also, he's not so much about combat, hand-to-hand combat. He's much more wily. So it felt, it didn't feel as necessary to kind of make him very sort of super protected and covered.
Yeah.
I think, he believes that he can kind of discuss and think his way out of a situation rather than kind of fight his way out, which I think is really interesting, because I think it's, it's something that obviously we used to get from Alfred and Uhtred, in their discussions. And I think that's why it was so enjoyable to kind of see those two together at the end, because it's not a dissimilar collaboration, I suppose, between characters, the kind of thinking guys.
Interesting. Now, were you a fan of The Last Kingdom before you were on it, or a part of it? No?
Actually, I always think that sort of works in my favour when I come on to a show that's already established. I did series 5 of Misfits, which was obviously very established before I came on board, and I think not having any preconceptions about the look of the show or any of the characters or what somebody else has dressed somebody like, for me is a better way to approach. I feel that then I'm making decisions based on what I think, and then I can go into a meeting and I'm quite confident that everything I'm saying is like, I believe it. It's not because I've seen it done, if that kind of makes sense. And then if I do get the job, then of course then I would go back and start from the beginning, and that's how I really learn about the characters and the look and what I do like and what I would like to change and what I think really works. So that's usually how I would approach coming into something that's existed before.
Does that come from experience, that sort of thought process? Did you go into a project and you really researched it and already had experience and you didn't feel like you could make it your own then because of that?
It comes from experience, but it comes from basically having to go to a meeting to pitch on a job with not very long to prepare beforehand.
Gotcha.
So for that situation, it felt the best approach was to, read the scripts really thoroughly, know what I was talking about with regard to this, and have, go with books and images and ideas of what I would do. And I think that process worked quite well, or I felt that it worked well for me and the way that I think. So it's something that I've carried on.
Would you give any special advice to anyone else who's coming up in the costume design sort of style world?
Yeah, I think you just really have to love this job because it's very all-consuming. When I do Last Kingdom, I'm away in Hungary for nearly 9 months of the year, which is a really long time. To be away from your life and your home and my cat and my boyfriend
And my boyfriend
and liberties, it's and then as we've already discussed, the working day is very long as well, and I think you have to have a passion for what you do if you're doing something that really absorbs you entirely. And I think on top of that, you have to work out how to stay inspired as well. And that comes from outside sources. So it's about making sure that I go to galleries and watch movies and, talk to people and read articles and I realized that I love to read books and I just don't have time anymore, but I realized that I can read books of essays quite successfully.
Okay.
Because it doesn't feel quite so monumental as a task. Kind of adapting to suit so that you can still do things, because I think if you don't have any outside inspiration, you can become creatively burnt out quite quickly, and
Right.
and where do your ideas come from, you know?
Interesting. Now, did you source the Bernard Cornwell books for any inspiration for the characters?
I dip in and out of them. Yes,
Okay.
I think again, I didn't want to become too obsessed
Right.
with them, because like I mentioned before, there's so many things that we have to take into consideration with regard to the practicalities of filming, that I didn't want to feel stressed that I wasn't doing something right, if that makes sense. And actually, what's also great is that all of the actors come having read and knowing exactly what their character is like and wears, and kind of, you know, Harry, who played Ethelwald so superbly,
Oh my God.
he came when we first chatted. He obviously in series 3 has a really big arc as well, which was so fun to do, and I miss Harry so much, and Ethelwald as well. I mean, what a character.
Oh, I know. Oh man.
And he when we first spoke, he said, listen, there's in the book, Ethelwald has this emblem made,
Okay.
and we kind of explored the idea that, you know, he doesn't have an army and he needs one. In series 3, he's trying to get followers, he's trying to buy them, he gets his kind of ramshackle bunch, and we really liked the idea that he was kind of really pushing this this logo and this branding, you know, and we were kind of thinking about how, if it was this day and age, would he be head to toe in Adidas or Nike, or like, you know, what's the kind of what's the or would it be like a green, you know, not a Greenpeace badge for Ethelwald, but you know, some kind of affiliation that he's really kind of pushing.
Yeah.
So we designed these stags with crosses for horns.
Cool.
Based on a depiction, but we sort of did them so that they weren't amazing, to kind of, we like the idea that they were just a little bit shit for him. And yeah, that like, for example, that was such a fun way to get in all of these things which are in the book into the character, but kind of do it our way, I suppose.
What does help inspire you then for your ideas on the show?
The cast, the script, mostly, and I don't know if it's an unusual approach, but I tend to start mood boarding from quite a contemporary aspect. So Ethelfled's first mood board had Rihanna and, you know, all these kind of Skades was all of these really amazing old Hussein Shalayan dresses. He did a collection where he made everything and then he buried it all in the garden and left it for a period of time. And so the results of that were really inspirational for me. On, you know, Skade lived on that little island in the middle of the lake, and she kind of waded in and out of the lake to get to and from. And so I tend to start from a point that's quite contemporary, actually, and then think about how can we put that into our world. Well, we can do that with the colors that we use and the fabrics that we use. I guess I've sort of formulated a little rule for myself. So if I'm designing something that seems sort of unbelievably modern, then I would make sure that I definitely use natural fabrics, and they're definitely not dyed into wild colors. But then if we do something, if I find a fabric that's amazing that we want to use, then make sure that the design is a lot more simplistic and a little more sympathetic to the period. So we kind of hopefully strike that balance between what's realistic and what isn't.
Very cool. Now, you mentioned Ethelfled. Could you talk about the significance behind her kind of fuchsia color that she has?
Yes. I mean, another character with such a huge journey over the 2 series that I've worked on. And really, in series 4, of course, she becomes the Lady of Mercia, as she should.
Yeah.
And the Mercian colours that I inherited from series 2 were the kind of green and mustard colours, and I put a little bit of pink in last year with Aldhelm and with Ethelfled herself, and I think I just really wanted to pull that out because it was quite an unusual colour, and it works really nicely with the with the green and the mustard of her army, which is her now army.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to do something that wasn't her taking over from Ethelred, because of course she's so different.
Absolutely. Another smaller character that I really like, his costume, is Ludica with the green. I love that. I don't know. I thought that was a really kind of a cool look that he had.
Yeah, that was fun actually. That was that costume actually. I really, thinking about sustainability and mindfulness, I really kind of challenged myself to rethink and use fabrics from the stocks that we already have, and that we've built up over the time that the show's been running. So him and Bergrid, actually, their costumes were all kind of re-dyed fabrics that we already had. So it was a bit of a fun sustainability project for those 2 guys.
You watch other shows then, like Vikings or Game of Thrones, and you maybe look for that for inspiration, or say, oh, how do we differentiate ourselves from them? Is that something that you look at as well?
Yeah, I mean, Vikings is a very different show to us with regard to budget and look. First and foremost, they have some incredible leather work. It's the costumes are really beautiful in Vikings, and with Game of Thrones as well. I mean, wowzers, there's some amazing costumes in that show as well. I think because Game of Thrones is much more fantasy driven, it didn't feel quite right for me. And with Vikings, I didn't want to, there's it's something I learned in university actually, but that kind of unconscious plagiarism's too strong a word, but unconsciously being led by something that you've seen. Sure. I really wanted to make sure that I didn't do that. So I did I think again, that's probably why I looked to much more contemporary references and motivations for design and inspiration, so that it felt different and new from those shows, and I wasn't kind of doing something that I hadn't realized I'd seen somewhere else.
Well, even though they might have bigger budgets, and it is beautiful in those shows, no doubt. I mean, you definitely go toe to toe with them and with The Last Kingdom and what you do with The Last Kingdom. Yeah. And that's for
everyone
sure.
Keeps telling us about the bigger budgets. I honestly, for me, I don't know, just because Last Kingdom's more of my favorite show. Not to knock on anyone who likes Vikings, but I really don't notice it. I don't know about you, Colby.
No, I think they're both great as far as the costumes go, but yeah. So the scope of your job is huge. And you talk about designing, you talk about working with the actors, you talk about being on set, checking the scenes and the continuity. What's your favorite aspect of your job?
It's really difficult. There's so many different stages. I think probably for me, when I managed to find the time to sit and watch the rushes, which of course I have to do, kind of after we've shot for 2 days, then I have to start and, all the way through, and kind of seeing things moving and being brought to life is really cool. But I think weirdly, it's probably when we shoot the stills, which is usually towards the end of filming, but that's when I get to kind of stand back, and I'm so used to seeing something every day that I haven't looked at it like that since the fitting, really, or since the first day on set. And usually that's surrounded by 1 million other things that are going on. So it's really nice for me to then be in a position with, with the actor and with the character, and just kind of stand and look at it and go, okay, yeah, we created something pretty cool, and it's lived a really nice life this year. And so it's almost sort of posthumous, I suppose.
That's cool. Very cool. Are there any other small details that might not necessarily, jump out at the viewer that you could tell us about that you love?
There's loads. We've hidden loads everywhere. We have lots of kind of backstories for things. I recently posted about Uhtred's costume and the development of his kind of design came from, in the very beginning in series 1,
with Ragnar the Fearless.
Yeah, when he adopted Earl Ragnar's costume at the beginning, and the logo there, and how we've kind of developed that through the seasons. I'm just trying to think. There's so many, and now I can't remember any, which is terrible.
Another really cool costume, those Aldhelms with I really like he's got kind of like the medallion-y kind of style. Super cool.
His tabard was used in series 2. That was his costume. So when I came in series 3, I looked through all the paperwork, and I looked through all the rails of all the costumes once they were unpacked. And I was like, I can't find that tabard. It must have been hired. So then we go through all the paperwork, and we find out that it was hired and where it was hired from. It was hired from somewhere that we hire a huge amount of the supporting artists, all of the armies, basically. So I called them, and they had it. Great. So they said they'd put it on with all the stuff that I'd pulled out when I went to visit them for the Danes and for the Wessex army, and they're like, great, it's all coming. And I think it arrived 4 or 5 days before we started filming. And James was in on the first day, I think. And it was like, great, we just need to get that tabard, fantastic. And then someone bought it to me, and we were looking at it going, oh no, we've been sent the wrong thing. Like, it's the right thing, but his was green, but this was red, but it had been kind of painted over by somebody, but the paint was coming off. So we were having this absolute crisis, and we ended up making the decision to get another leather worker in to make that tabard, and she did so in a ridiculously short space of time, made such a beautiful thing. Totally. Because obviously our other leather worker was working on all, Uhtred and, and Bloodhair and all of the new characters. So it was a real kind of, that was quite stressful, actually. I'd forgotten about that.
Oh,
but
thanks for bringing that up, Colby. Jeez.
Sorry.
But we decided to, when we remade it, we made it out of this really beautiful kind of green suede. And, it was kind of nice to make it for James, actually, because he's so great. And we made his we had fun with him, actually. We made a brooch for him that has tiny little pigs running around the outside to tie in with the Mercian crest.
Cool.
That was quite fun. And actually with Ethelred's brooch, I had that dipped in gold, just to kind of, just to give him a little edge.
Yeah, this guy's trying to be king. He's trying to totally.
It was quite fun, actually. I got to make quite a lot of crowns this year. So Edward had a crown, Ethelred had a crown. It was good. It was Ethelfled had a floral crown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very, very cool. I'm so fascinated with those little intricacies, and you might not be able to see it right on the screen, but seeing you post about them it's really cool for Steve and I, who are huge nerds, especially about the show. So
it's so nice that you guys have you guys always been into the show from the beginning, or is it something that you kind of found later?
It was actually when we were in school and we had just finished up a few shows. We were looking for the next thing to watch, and The Last Kingdom kept popping up on things to be recommended. And there was three seasons were already out at this point. It was 2018, I think, when we first started watching it.
Really?
And so that's when we discovered it. So it was already out into its third season, but we had never heard anyone else talk about it or anything. So it really felt like a great find, and it was just such a good show. And it was just like, how is this not like Game of Thrones level?
Right.
Everyone talking about
Vikings
this sort of
level
thing.
And still, it's changed a little bit now, but when you talk to people, it's still not a huge show where we live. So that's kind of what we're trying to tell the world about, how awesome the show is.
Yeah, it's kind of why we started this. I mean, we started out with Star Wars was our first top, because that was what was coming out when we first started doing. So we're gonna get to Last Kingdom, we're gonna get to it, and we finally did. And season 4 was coming out right at that time. So
timing couldn't have been better. So
that's great.
It became our favorite show. Yeah. Obviously. What other shows are you interested in that you like to watch, or movies?
So you guys might not know, it's there's a show called This Country, which has come out in the UK, and it's comedy, and it's so beautifully written and acted by a brother and sister who play cousins in the show, and it's very British. Humor and observational, I suppose. Gotcha. And it's really, we came across it at the beginning of lockdown, me and my boyfriend, and they're kind of 20-minute episodes, and there's 6 episodes a season, and there's 3 seasons. So we unfortunately blitzed through it really quickly. But it was just the most perfect thing at that real kind of, at the beginning of this time when everything was pandemonium. Yeah. To find something so kind of lovely and calm and beautifully written. And so that definitely. Cool. What else? We've just started watching The Morning Show, actually. And I really, 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 really like it. So I don't know why it got quite a bad rep over here. Oh, really? I don't know about for you guys, but yeah, I was like, who are these people? This is fab. It's cool. But yeah, I like a lot of kind of crime dramas, I suppose. So so I think you and I might share a favorite podcast other than our podcast, of course, the Screen Chronicles. My Favorite Murder? Yeah. It's like my favorite. It's the best. I met Karen and Georgia. I met them, yeah. Oh my God. Did you go to one of their shows, or where'd you meet them? Yeah, I went to their show in London. And it was a really weird experience, actually, because I work with, I work with actors all the time, or I work with famous people all the time. And, it's like going to work. And it really weirded me out that I was kind of quite freaked out by meeting Karen. Oh my God. Because I love her. She's amazing. But that actually, when I was working on Endeavour, which is maybe you know it, set in the 60s crime drama. And I was working with my team, who were all obsessed with My Favorite Murder. So we would listen to it all the time and talk about it all the time. And then Yolanda was driving home one night, and she called us, and she basically was listening to an episode, and Karen says that she loves Endeavour, and she was talking about it, and blah, blah, blah. So she was a bit beside herself. So Yolanda then wrote to them, and they read out Yolanda's letter, and it was very cute. She was we were a bit excited about that, actually.
That's oh my God, I can't even imagine.
I didn't realize that I had the ability to kind of be a fan of someone, I suppose, because it's something that I kind of can't do or wouldn't be part of my working day. If that does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense to me. I'm a big baseball guy, and I used to work at the Baseball Hall of Fame, and we'd have these famous baseball players coming all the time. But for my job, I couldn't be a fan of them. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, I guess it's sort of like that.
Yeah, like when somebody gets cast in something and you have to be like, it's really exciting, and then you meet them and it's really normal and it's fine. But yeah, with Karen.
I hope they were nice. They seemed so nice.
So nice. I mean, it was so late by the time that we met them. It was like midnight or something. So
I'll have to listen to the live in London. I don't know, they've probably done more than one, I'm not sure, but I'll have to listen.
I think they've definitely posted the one that I was at. Yeah. Okay. It was cool. It's such a great show. I love them.
Okay, cool. All right, we'll have to check that out. What can we expect from you in the future? Any work coming out soon, or anything you can tell us about?
Well, I was 4 days away from beginning to shoot a movie actually when lockdown happened. So I don't know. I need to really kind of wait and see what happens with the industry and with the health and safety element, to kind of see when we can go back to work and what we can do and what kind of projects that means as well for the time being.
Okay, cool. Do you have any goals with your career?
Yes, I do. It's actually something that I've said that I need to sit down in this period and kind of write down a bit of a plan for the future, because it takes such a long time to film something that the years are slipping away, if that kind of makes sense. So, it's 2 years already just on Last Kingdom and 1 year on Endeavour, and it's kind of what does come next and what's interesting and what's challenging, and I don't like being too comfortable. I like kind of challenges to think about. So, but I'd love to do more, period work, and Last Kingdom's just the most amazing show to work on. That it's the most creatively rewarding show so far, for sure.
Is there a specific period you want to hit still?
Well, there's a couple actually. I'd love to do something in the 30s, 20s, 30s would be really cool. Yeah. And also something, kind of Game of Thrones in that sort of, is it period, is it sci-fi, is it future? That kind of fantasy, I suppose, would be amazing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Well, we hit a lot of characters today. We appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Man, was it an interesting talk. And we really appreciate that, Molly.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, if you want to see more of Molly's work, check out her IMDb, which we will have linked below. Follow her on Instagram, Twitter, anywhere else they can follow you, Molly.
Nope.
That's it.
Her website, too, we'll have down below.
And the website.
Website.
We'll have the website linked. And as always, thank you, everyone, for your support in the Screen Chronicles. You can follow and subscribe and like, and we would appreciate that. But for now, we will say goodbye from Screen Chronicles and Molly Rowe.
Thank you.
Can we get a Destiny is all from you, Molly?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. Destiny is all.
Yeah.